Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new Doctor Who video where today I'm discussing the news, news that came out of the Gallifrey One convention over the weekend, which suggested that at some point the Centenary special that we're getting in October of this year was planned to be the last ever episode of Doctor Who. So yes, what is this all about? I saw some stuff about it on Twitter last night, and so I thought it'd be good to kind of bring a video about it to kind of clarify exactly what's going on. So essentially there was of course the Gallifrey One convention over the weekend with various different people from, the past and present of the show coming to do various panels and things like that. One of the most interesting people for me was Matt Strevens, who is the executive producer of the Jodie Whittaker era, alongside Chris Chibnall, who's sort of the executive producer stroke writer. Matt Strevens is kind of the other executive producer who's involved in a lot more of the actual sort of production of the programme, I guess, whereas Chris is more on the writing side. So clearly Matt, was an integral part of Jodie's era coming together and knew everything that was going on, obviously, throughout the era. And so he had a lot of different interesting things to say, but I want to focus in on this one particular fact about the Centenary special. So yes, obviously the kind of way the Centenary special came about was, not necessarily expected. When we first heard about the plans for the sort of Series 30, what became Series 13 of Doctor Who, we heard there was going to be 8 episodes shot, whether, including a special of some description as well. We didn't know quite what that would look like at the time, but that was the initial announcement we got around, I think it was just after the Revolution of the Daleks, so January of last year. Then in, I think it was July, when Jodie was announced to be leaving, when Chris Chibnall was announced to be leaving, they also then announced that there was a Centenary special, an extra long, feature-length, exciting special episode to celebrate the BBC Centenary, which is going to air in October of this year. That was the sort of additional special, which wasn't originally planned by the Doctor Who production team, but the BBC approached them and said, "Can you make this episode? We kind of need it. We want to have a Centenary special celebration." And so suddenly they're all running around thinking, "Oh, we've got to make another episode, and it's going to be Jodie's final episode." So there's a lot going on there. Now, the interesting thing here, which is something that Matt Strevens said, he obviously explained the process of how this special got, commissioned at the last minute, really, and that they hadn't quite originally planned it. I know I've seen some people kind of say that therefore Legend of the Sea Devils was meant to originally be Jodie's final episode. I'm not so sure about that personally. I'm more inclined to believe that what will become the Centenary special was originally going to be Jodie's last episode, just whether it was an Easter special or what, I don't know, and that actually Legends of the Sea Devils was the additional one, really, that, maybe was planned for the original Series 13, but then got dropped once Flux came about, and then they weren't planning to do it until the Centenary special came about, and then they thought, oh, let's push that one into the big, exciting, epic end of Jodie's era, then let's do the Sea Devils and bring that one back as well. That's just my theory. I could be completely wrong, but I'm more inclined to believe that was how it went than that they originally planned the Sea Devils and that a Sea Devil story to be Jodie's final episode. As great as I'm sure it's going to be, I just don't really see how that would have come about. But yeah, so the key thing here, I'm looking to the Centenary special, is that when Chris Chibnall was tasked with writing this episode, and obviously he'd made the decision that he was leaving, that this was going to be his final episode, that this was going to be Jodie Whittaker's final episode, there was no indication of who was going to be the next showrunner of Doctor Who. Russell T Davies was not in position, he was not taking over the show. There was no indication really from the BBC that of whether Doctor Who would be continuing or not after this episode. And so Chris went into it writing it almost as if it was the last ever episode of Doctor Who, because there was just no knowledge, no reason to believe for certain that Doctor Who was going to return, next year or the year after with a new showrunner and a new Doctor and whatever. And so that was, that's a hugely different approach to take on an episode if you think this is going to be it for Doctor Who. Not just for your era, but for Doctor Who as a whole show. And that really was, as Matt explained at this convention, that was kind of the approach they had going into it. And so I think he implied that part of the original plan was not to have a proper regeneration scene for Jodie, but sort of to leave it fairly sort of open-ended and have the special end in that way. But once, during production, they found out that Russell was coming back, because production for the Centenary special was from, I think, early August through till mid-October. And then Russell was, of course, announced towards the end of September. I think it was September 23rd or 24th. And Matt Strevens, Chris Chibnall, the production team, only found that out one day before it was officially announced. So it wasn't like they'd known about it for 3 months and they could plan around that and work with Russell and whatever. There was none of that because they didn't know about it. So, it wasn't a case of being able to liaise with Russell as to how would you like this episode to end so that Russell can then pick it up. That just wasn't an option. But it then meant that after seemingly having planned the episode without any sort of real regeneration conclusion whatever, just leaving it fairly open-ended, now, they had suddenly 3 weeks of filming left. quickly, let's kind of write together the regeneration scene and let Jodie actually have the big regeneration scene that she wanted to have, but that just wasn't necessarily a guarantee or something they could really, look to end the episode on if there was no prospect for the future of Doctor Who. So I think it's all absolutely fascinating. I do wonder what the special is going to be like if it's an episode that was kind of intended to be the last episode ever, because sure, maybe the ending of it has been tweaked to leave it more leading into what Russell's going to do. But the bulk of the story would have been written at a time where Chris Chibnall fully believed that Doctor Who was coming to an end. And, that's fascinating, I think, to see what that's going to look like. Is it going to be a nostalgia fest? I kind of think it is. Is it just going to be focused on his era, or is it going to be the whole show? I often think about how on earth would I write the end of Doctor Who? Like, how would you do that? I don't think the show will ever end in any form. Sure, you'll have open-ended episodes. Maybe the show, will come off TV at some point in the future and there'll be an open-ended ending there. But it's not like you're ever going to write the final conclusion to Doctor Who, because it's just not that sort of program that can have an ending, I think. But I'm really, really intrigued to see what, this means for the episode, and just how if it's going to feel like a proper ending rather than just the end of the Chris Chibnall era. So yes, it's fascinating to think about this fact that just the production team thought Doctor Who could be coming to an end, and then Russell came along to save us, I guess, to an extent, and jump in and bring the show back and, continue it on into the 60th anniversary and beyond, which is all tremendously exciting. I do kind of hope that down the line, when Russell wants to move on again, that there's a more clear plan in place for the next showrunner, that, maybe he can, through his era, kind of work to finding a new showrunner so that there is someone to take it over at the end, in 3, 4, 5, however many years' time, because Russell isn't going to do it forever. And clearly the BBC weren't exactly finding it easy to get a new showrunner after Chris Chibnall was gone, because they didn't have one until Russell turned up at the last minute and said, okay, I'll do it. It really is slightly concerning, frankly, that it ended up in that state. And I don't know, I'm just intrigued to see how that will play out in the future. So yes, it hardly bears thinking about a Doctor Who not on television anymore, and that the show could have come to an end. Thankfully, it's not going to, but I think the Centenary special and the sort of background of that having been the case is going to be absolutely fascinating. But guys, do let me know down in the comments below your thoughts and theories on the Centenary special. Also, if you had any thoughts on whether you were going to write the last ever episode of Doctor Who, how would you write it? What would be your ending to Doctor Who as a program? Is it even possible? I don't think it is, but I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. But apart from that, guys, that's just about it from this video. Please remember to hit that like button, that subscribe if you're new here, and I will see you again very soon for a brand new video. But until then, it's goodbye.